Hello, my beauties and bees, and welcome to another installment of Cryptic Corner, where we explore the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. So, we're going to have a fun one today. I've been on kind of a cryptid kick here lately, trying to make sure I cover all the basics on this topic under the new channel name. So, I'm going back through the archives and picking up stuff that I covered before, especially. Yeah, the aliens on the couch, yes. But so I've been rolling back through some stuff, trying to make sure that I get everything, all the basic big cryptids, I guess, from all the continents and stuff covered, and all the ones from every ocean and every continent and every island, all the big famous ones. So that's what we've been kind of going through here lately. And giant animals are one of the things that we've been covering a lot. Today, though, the giant animal we're covering is actually a giant animal that exists, unlike the giant spiders, which you're not going to... No, the biggest spiders that ever existed exist now, and they're about as big as a dinner plate. That's the biggest spiders have ever been throughout history, as far as we know from the fossil record. Yes, there were giant scorpions. There were huge scorpions. There were scorpions as big as me. But, no, well, sea scorpions as big as me. I guess that's catch-22 there. Brontoscorpio was a huge, huge animal. And then you had Pulmonoscorpius, Kirkinensis. Yeah, Pulmonoscorpius kirkinensis, which was a giant scorpion, a true scorpion about the size of a cat. It was huge. It's the biggest true scorpion, I believe. So it's the biggest true arachnid in the fossil record. But there's no giant spiders in the fossil record. So just to clear the air about that. But the animal we have today, though, there are giants of in the fossil record. Because we are looking at the Mapinguari, or the giant ground sloth. So let's get started. This channel is Terror Facts, the mystery of the giant sloth. Volume. Okay.
With 65% of the Earth being unexplored, one can wonder how many undiscovered creatures are lurking. This raises the question, what if many animals claimed to be extinct are still alive to this day? From the giant beasts of the past, there is one creature that stands out like no other. This creature is the ground sloth, the reason being that many cryptids being spotted closely resemble the ground sloth.
I don't know, you say it resembles a ground sloth, you're also saying it resembles a Calicothere, though, because we don't know whether Calicotheres had big shaggy coats, but they had skeletons very similar to ground sloths and lived in a very similar ecological niche, so it's safe to assume that they had shaggy coats based on ecology. They had the big claws, and they were partially bipedal, large browsers. They didn't get quite as big as sloths. They got huge, though. They're closer related to horses, though. So they're actually artiodactyls, or not artiodactyls, persiodactyls with claws. Sorry, I said artiodactyls. I'll never live that down. They're persiodactyls. Calicotheres are persiodactyls with claws. They had a horse head and claws. They lived very similar to a giant ground sloth. I think a long time before ground sloths really became huge. But, so it's not a unique ecological niche, but the recentness of the sloth filling this niche is unique.
Ever since its fossils were discovered in the late 18th century, there has been so many reported sightings. You may be wondering, what is this ground sloth like? It stands at over 9 feet long, can weigh up to 550 pounds, huge claws, with a long, slender skull. There is also an even bigger subspecies that measured up to 11 feet long. Ground sloths preferred to live in forests near rivers or lakes. but they could also
So ground sloth isn't a species, right? Ground sloth. Oh my gosh, ground sloth is a like a suborder, right? Or sloths. I guess sloths are a suborder, and then within that suborder, there is the sloths with how many genera do they look at? Let's look at this real quick. I got 59 seconds in before I had to say, let's look at a phylogeny. Let's see. So, just to keep us all up to speed, though, there were these giant sloths that lived in the Caribbean, and they were more quadruped, right? All kinds of cool. Lived on different Caribbean islands. And then there were these two groups, which includes modern sloths here, but they have the megatheres and what have you, and Nothrotheridae. That's a hard one to say. And then, yeah, this is the Megalonyx. Megalonyx is very closely tethered to the Mapinguari that we're going to be talking about, so that's good. All right, and then you got these scaly Dothotheres, Colopodia, which is the two-toed sloths extant, but they had giant cousins too: Lestodon, Paramylodon, Mylodon, Glossotherium, which is also more quadruped. So yeah, there were a lot of them. And sloths leave great. They leave great fossil records because their bones are so dense. Anyway, let's go.
also tolerate the cold as they lived during the Great Ice Age. Although the ground sloth appeared to be more of a herb.
They didn't just live during an ice age. They lived for longer than just. They lived through ice ages, multiple, and warm periods too. And let's not forget that parts of South America have been close to the equator since I want to say the late Jurassic. So there's always been, even during an ice age, there's always been tropical climate in South America to some extent.
Herbivore, it would sometimes scavenge for meat. The bigger subspecies of the ground sloth, the
Much love, Miss Lemon.
giant ground sloth, was the biggest bipedal animal to ever exist. The largest ones were about the size of an elephant or bigger. Now that you have a depiction of what a ground sloth is like, let's move on to the sightings of this creature. The first alleged sightings came from Patagonia. In 1890, an Argentine explorer claimed to have seen a hairy pangolin-like creature. They suggested that it was a young individual due to...
Is that sound balanced better? It's a nightmare to edit when the sound... And I'm terrible at trying to figure this out visually on my own, so... I try to do it where the colors both bounce right into the middle of yellow when I'm just talking, or when they're just talking.
...with small stature. In 1898, a man by the name of Edward Chase claimed that his friend said he knew an Indian that had a bizarre experience with a hairy creature. He had followed the tracks of what looked like a wooden shoe with two cleats across the sole. When he finally got sight of what he was looking, he claimed what he saw looked like a hairy pig as big as a bull. A year after this, 3 men in search of this creature claimed to have...
A hairy pig as big as a bull sure as hell sounds like a tapir to me. In southern South America, a hairy pig as big as a bull. Let's see. Tapir. Indian. Tapir. Range. Let's have a look at that. Let's see. That's the mountain tapir. Guess it's a little further north than I expected. I'm willing to concede that. They live in the... Yeah, I guess because maybe the tapir need... Here, I'm going to pull it over so you guys can see where their range is, too. Alright, let's see. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, Yeah, this is what we do, and I just keep stopping and stopping. So this is the mountain tapir. It lives in the Andes, but only in the northern portion of the range, not down here. That's not to say that there couldn't be. It's more. I would say it's more likely that there was a larger range of a species of tapir down here than to assume that there was still a giant ground sloth down here. That's just my personal bias, though, because tapir are still alive. Yeah. Anyway, I need to move this stuff back over here so I can have it. There we go. All right. Carry on, video guy.
Have encountered it and attacked it, but ended up being chased off by the creature. In Paraguay, during the second voyage of the HMS Beagle, Charles Darwin had said the South Americans have a belief that there is an animal larger than a bullock that goes by the name of Grand Beast. Darwin and Captain Fitzroy were told by a South American that he saw one of those creatures captured. He said it resembled a hog with claws and stood about 4 feet tall at only a couple months old. In the Amazons, there has been many reported sightings of cryptids that resemble the ground sloth.
A hog with claws. Now, I know that giant anteaters don't get that big. Giant anteaters get really big, though. They get as big as a hog. Or what they would consider a hog, what the natives of South America would consider a hog, which would be a javelina or a peccary, which are slightly larger than your average dog. But the giant armadillos can reach, I think, 150 pounds. But I would hope that they wouldn't confuse that. But armadillos are considered, or were considered by early European settlers to be like some type of pig.
One of the most famous ones being the Mapinguari. This is a creature reported in the Brazilian and Venezuelan Amazons. It was described as a bulletproof, long-haired creature with large claws, said to be able to both walk and crawl. David Oren has said he has heard over 80 sightings of this creature. They also described it to have a monkey-like face. The Amazonian people greatly fear this creature. David Oren said
Now, modern sloths have a more monkey-like face because they fill a similar niche to monkeys, to arboreal folivores. Whereas ground sloths would have shared a niche with something closer to, Calacotherium or something extant. An okapi. That's a good one. They would share a habitat similar to an okapi or a tapir. Right? Forest, mid-level forest browser.
he has seen many tracks greatly resembling the Mapinguaris. He said
so think about how their heads look. That's just what I'm saying. Because they wouldn't be monkey-like. They'd be long. They'd have robust jaws for processing. Because they're not arboreal, so they don't need to lose that head weight in order to maintain a lighter frame to move through the trees.
Tracks were knuckle-walking tracks with 3 digits, about an inch deep. One interesting account occurred in Spain. A man by the name of Edinalo claimed he was attacked by a large hairy animal which broke his jaw when he went into the forest. He managed to be recovered when he was found by his friends. This encounter was so scary for him, he quit his job and
Maybe he was getting a little handsy, okay? I was just defending myself.
refused to ever return back to the forest. Since colonial times, there has been constant reports of creatures that resemble a bear-like sloth. In 1977, an anthropologist learned from Peruvian people about a cow-sized animal that can both walk and crawl, with dark matted...
A bear-like sloth. So, you know, I would love for a giant sloth to still be around. I think if there were giant sloths, this is going to sound kind of biased. I think if there were giant sloths that had survived into the Holocene, that there would be depictions of them in Mesoamerican art.
And a snout similar to an anteater's. It is said to live in caves and forests, and the people are afraid of it due to its aggressive behavior. Even in the United States, there has been claimed sightings of the ground sloth. In 2011, a man named Henry claimed he saw a large animal moving through the cypress trees. He said it was huge and hairy. The man said he had saw it rear up once, and said he knew for a fact it was not a bear. When he looked up a picture of a Mapinguari, he said it closely resembled this creature, and he swore.
When you look up a picture of Mapinguari, you get something that looks like Gossamer from from Looney Tunes, right? Like, check this out. Okay. There we go, Mapinguari. Gonna find a good general depiction of it. Yeah, there we go. Super weird looking creature. Here we are. So, open image, a new tab. So, check this out. That's the typical depiction of a Mapinguari, right? And then here's, I love Gossamer. He was like my favorite. Yeah, and then here's here's our boy Gossamer. Look at him. So, family resemblance maybe? Eh? Are they related? I don't know, he only has one eye, but still.
That at what he saw. Another sighting was from a woman. She said while driving through a swampy area, she saw a huge hairy animal gallop on all fours run across the road. And when she saw its arms raise up, she realized it was not a bear. Another woman claimed to have seen a huge 6 to 7 feet tall sloth-like creature. When she looked up the description of the ground sloth, she said it closely resembled it, and was almost sure it was what she saw. It seems like for hundreds of years people have been reporting sightings of this creature, mainly throughout South America, but even Central America. The one sighting that I find very interesting is the alleged cave cow sighting. The cave cow is once again another cryptid that closely resembles the ground sloth. They are described as lizard-shaped animals, covered in hair and about 10 feet long, and said to live in caves. A story that was told by an
the antagonist from the King Kong Skull Island movie.
archaeologist Thomas Gann, French naturalist Frank Blancaniux, and his servant Joe were in Belize, near El Cayo. They were resting in a remote savanna region in a windless day. Frank spotted a swaying palm and sent Joe to investigate. All he heard after was shrieking screams of pain. He rushed to the area and all he saw was Joe severely mauled. Joe had called this creature the old devil himself, and said that the creature had ripped him up before running into the bush. He unfortunately died of his injuries. After this incident, Frank spent a day following this creature's obvious trails. He described
This big monster that was making trees sway as it moved through the forest, right? Just killed your buddy, like solo one-shotted your buddy. And now you're gonna follow it through the jungle by yourself.
Described the tracks as a giant human hand with 3 fingers and large claws. He never found anything and said the region was filled with dense vegetation and caves. Another sighting was made in Belize in 2015. A pair of tourists claimed to have witnessed the cave cow. They saw trees being pushed around, as if the animal that was pushing the vegetation around was very large. Their guide called it a cow. Even in Canada, there is a cryptid that resembles the ground sloth.
So, the cave cow. Cave cow. Sloths did dig caves and tunnels. So that's, they're kind of well known for that, right? And we have like their droppings and stuff, and some of their fur even are recovered from these scratch dug burrows that these giant sloths made. And it's not like unusual though for a large herbivorous animal to do that. Elephants dig caves too. They dig caves looking for salt. Animals go a long way to find salt. So yeah, it's a important mineral for especially for herbivores because of their diet, and that they need to get supplementary salt into their body. Good morning, Grayson.
The Satochin, from the forest of Yukon, described as a large, dangerous animal bigger than the biggest grizzlies. This animal was rumored to feed on beavers. This creature was identified when the witnesses were shown pictures of ground.
So, ground sloths are not going to feed on beavers. Even if they were going to be opportunistically feeding on meat, they'd probably largely feed on carrion. They wouldn't hunt something that could easily escape into the water like a beaver. Although there were aquatic giant sloths too, we can't put that out of mind. There were marine sloths actually, the only xenarthrans that I'm aware of that ever took to the ocean. Of course, in shallow, calm inland seas, and what was, I guess, once the Caribbean closed up and it became this warm little hotbed of a lagoon, they were able to spread, and that's why there's so many sloths on all these Caribbean islands too, because they're great swimmers. They did move north into North America, and they did colonize all the way up into Canada, and even up into like the Yukon. There's been giant sloth remains found, but there's nothing in any of the cultures. I mean, they're going to say, yeah, these people identify. Then that's one thing that it's always funny about these reports is they show native people pictures of dinosaurs or giant sloths or woolly mammoths or things like that, and the natives like, yeah, that's what I saw, sure. But they don't tell you that when they're given these reports, these people are paying them. They're paying the natives to tell them something, to pick something from that book and say that's what it was. They're getting paid. Like when you watch Monster Quest and they talk to these people like in the Congo, and they're like, oh yeah, we saw Mokele Mimbe, and it's this dinosaur right here. Those people were given money by, in those situations, given money by Christian organizations which were funding these expeditions, Young Earth Creationist, into the Congo. So they were supplying this. They're not just paying them directly, but also their expeditions into the jungle brought revenue into these people's lives that they wouldn't have otherwise. So keeping these crazy white people looking for dinosaurs in the jungle is lucrative.
Ground sloths. In the 1890s, a woman named Dawn Charlie was interviewed and described an encounter with the Satochin. The encounter was from her husband's sister, who was fishing and claimed to see a 8 to 9 foot long animal come out of the woods, in which they proceeded to shoot at it with no effect, until they were able to get the motor going and flee. These sightings really make one doubt what is actually extinct. There are so many cryptids closely relating to the ground sloth.
These last few sightings, though, it just doesn't scream sloth. There's nothing about it that says this isn't a big bear. Good morning, Joe. There's nothing about it that says that this couldn't be a bear or a wild horse. Wild horses can stand up on their hind legs.
There is a point where it is not coincidental that all of these people are reporting similar sightings. The ground sloth is one of the most fascinating creatures. It is claimed to be extinct, but there has been so many alleged sightings of this creature. There are not many creatures that have as much evidence to prove their existence.
Are not sloths like not deer?
But the ground sloth has been reported to be seen for hundreds of years, with sightings as recent as 2019. It is hard to believe that this creature is not alive and hidden somewhere that the media can't reach. The ground sloth might be the most cited
that the media can't reach. What a weird way to phrase that the media can't reach. It's not the media that goes out looking for giant ground sloths. It's naturalists. The people who would be expected to find giant ground sloths anyway would be naturalists on expeditions. People doing actual science, even people out just doing like surveys and stuff should run into a lot of the megafauna if there is any. in the area. So, I mean, eventually, and like they'd like to talk about native tales, but when it comes to native, when we're going to get into that in the next video, I'll just let this guy finish.
Cryptid, which makes it even more believable. There has been creatures labeled as extinct which were found alive. This means that it is not impossible for a creature that lived here on this earth and deemed extinct to still be alive right now. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thanks for watching till the end, and I would love to hear your opinion.
How big of a sloth are you proposing here that survives? Because there were ground sloths that were just the size, everything in between the size of a raccoon to the size of an elephant. So every size in between, there's ground sloths. Fill all kinds of niche. There's ones that are more quadruped because they live in a more open area. There's ones that move more easily in a bipedal position, so they can reach higher leaves, things like that. There's a lot of versatility, and again, we talked about the aquatic sloth. So, yeah, a lot of versatility among sloths. So, if one were to survive, and you were to say, "Oh yeah, there's a surviving sloth," and it's the size of a terrier, and it lives in burrows deep in the jungle and eats roots and never comes out during the day. Okay, that'd be really cool to find out, but I'm not going to believe that there's a 9-foot tall sloth that no one ever sees. And the Amazon's dense and deep, and there are places that have never been photographed or seen by modern technology, right? Sure, definitely. But megafauna require a great deal of resources, and something like a sloth, which would have a slow reproductive process, would require a very stable population over a broad area in order to keep passing on viable genetics.
Down in the comments.
Alright, so now this channel is actually, the truth is scarier than fiction. I like this channel. It was suggested to me by Wild World Thomas, friend of the show, friend of the channel, big channel. Who's also interested in cryptozoology, but this is crypto stuff too. So,
the Mapinguari has become one of the most popular and well-known cryptids. Usually thought of as a living ground sloth or a large ape, the cryptid is reported from the Amazon rainforest in South America. I have seen a lot of misconceptions about this cryptid, so I'm making a video to talk about some of them.
There's a myriad of reasons why this wouldn't be an ape. Just by the plate, there's largely improbable that this would be an ape, since apes have been megafauna for a long time, and megafauna don't do great rafting across the ocean, but smaller animals like monkeys do. So a convergent monkey or ape-like monkey maybe could have evolved in South America, but it wouldn't be an ape.
I'm not trying to say that the Mapinguari is real or that it's a ground sloth, but just trying to talk about some of the errors I've seen online.
Dr. David Oren is a Harvard-educated research biologist working in South America. He believes that ancient legends about a creature called Mapinguari may be based in fact.
For a bit of an introduction, American ornithologist David Oren arrived in the Brazilian Amazon in 1977. He immediately began to hear stories of various forest myths.
Yeah, there's very few uncontacted tribes, but I hope we maintain our distance from the ones that do exist, Native atheists, because people keep trying to contact them with Bibles, and it's annoying. Like the Sentinelese people, that guy, that they ended up killing that guy who came out there trying to give him Bibles and stuff. What he really wanted to give him, or not what he wanted to give him, what he's really going to end up giving him was freaking diseases, because they've been isolated for tens of thousands of years.
One of the most common of these was the Mapinguari, a sort of giant monkey with robust claws. To Oren, it initially appeared to be just another part of the folklore of the rainforest. For every person who claimed to have seen it, 4 mocked the idea that it could be real. Even the eyewitnesses thought it was a myth prior to their own experiences. The Mapinguari was a creature of the seringueiros, or rubber tappers, but even during the silver age of the rubber plantations, it wasn't taken seriously by others. By the time of Oren's arrival, the Amazon gold rush was on, and many of the first Mapinguari reports he heard came from gold prospects.
So, Joe, I definitely think that there could be dozens of species, even mammalian species, in the dense Amazon. The resources required to support a population of megafauna, that's things over 90 kilograms, big animals. The resources needed to sustain that we're gonna be able to see the ecological impact of that, and we know they had big appetites because we see their big poops in their big caves.
And mine employees. Historian David Vieira, who had collected several sightings from gold miners while he was in charge of Serra Pelada in Para, told Oren about some reliable modern accounts. During his discussions with Vieira in 1988, Oren heard a first-hand Mapinguari sighting from northern Tocantins. This sighting made a light go off in his head, and he thought this creature could only be a ground sloth. After this, he collected more than 80 first-hand reports from multiple states in Brazil. He also interviewed 7 hunters who claimed to have killed Mapinguaris. Now let's get into the misconceptions. One of the most common ones I've seen is that the Mapinguari is a cyclops with a mouth in its stomach. How could it be a ground sloth? The unknown animal or...
Ember, you're just gonna have to deal with that. You're no longer megafauna. I know you want to be. We all want to be megafauna. Yeah, or apex predator. Very few apex predators are megafauna, though. Big cats, bears, crocodiles. Not wolves. I don't think hyenas get that big either. Not generally. Extinct hyenas did. Cave hyenas did. They got huge. And then there was Pachycrocotus, but megafauna. There's a lot of herbivore megafauna, but not a lot of carnivore megafauna.
Or cryptid, which witnesses and cryptozoologists call the Mapinguari, is not the cyclops of Brazilian folklore. While there are some people who claim to have seen the cyclops, the bulk of David Oren's 80-plus reports describe an animal, not a cyclops. According to these witnesses, the Mapinguari has long coarse hair, a horse-like snout but a monkey-like face, and very large hooked claws. It can move on 4 legs and on 2 legs, and it's a herbivore, supposedly being particularly fond of palm trees. The distinction between the mythical Cyclops Mapinguari and this unknown animal is not an invention of cryptozoologists. One of the earliest uses of the term Mapinguari is from a newspaper called Cruzeiro do Sul. In 1913...
Oh, the baby one looks cute. Mom looks like she's about ready to kung fu somebody if they come any closer, though.
They referred to it as a generic giant man, but also described a distinct mystery animal, the Macaco de Boraca, a beast the size of a Newfoundland dog with long tangled bulletproof hair. They also said that it could rear onto its hind legs to the height of a man. In 1960, a local took...
See, I wonder if they weren't talking about giant armadillos there. Because a bulletproof hair or whatever would do the scales of an armadillo could be seen as like fused bulletproof hair to native people. Maybe I don't know, but Yeah, and it could be, but it said tangled and fused. I don't know.
Issue with a newspaper stating that the Mapinguari was a giant man, instead claiming that the Mapinguari was really a sort of huge and horrifying horse-like animal. He said that the creature had recently been seen by men working on the road that would link Acre to Brasilia. The first known use of the word Mapinguari being associated with an unknown animal and not a giant man was around 1926. So the idea that the Mapinguari isn't a cyclops has been around for a while. In fact, it seems possible that people just used the name Mapinguari for multiple mysterious animals.
Yeah, it would make more sense if it was an actual creature, that it wouldn't be a cyclops, right? That wouldn't be the expectation, that it'd have one eye. That's just not a common state for a mammal to have.
And creatures in the jungles of the Amazon.
Right.
Kind of like how
There aren't any mammals that just have one eye. Oh, here, yeah, I was going to talk about the chupacabra being applied to different groups of animals. Ground bird kangaroo dromaeosaur in Chile is what they call a chupacabra. Canines in Texas. Insectoid. Monkey, yeah.
people use the chupacabra name to refer to multiple different cryptids. The second misconception is that the Mapinguari is too small to be Megatherium, and Megatherium is too large to survive undiscovered. Megatherium is the best known ground sloth, and it reached a length of about 20 feet or 6 meters. This led some people to question how a Mapinguari could remain undetected, but there were actually quite a few kinds of ground sloths. From these
kinds, like biblical kinds? No, there are a few species or clades. Let's use that term instead. I don't like kinds. But yeah, there were a lot of small to mid-sized ground sloths. Like the Mylodon's one that comes to mind. It wasn't small. It wasn't like tiny, but it was like only like 1 ton as opposed to the Megatherium, which was several tons. And it stood about 9 feet tall, whereas the Megatherium stood, like 14 feet tall? Monstrous. Absolutely monstrous animal.
sheep-sized Nothrotherium to the Diablotherium to the elephant-sized Megatherium and possible even larger ground sloth fossils that haven't yet been categorized. David Oren never identified the Mapinguari as a Megatherium. It was usually described as being about the size of a human or a little larger, not the size of an elephant. His original theory was that it was a mylodontid sloth, mainly because of its bulletproof hide. Mylodontids are famous for their bone armor. After looking further into anatomical details, he switched to a megalonychid identity. Either way, we're talking about the possible survival of an animal that's not much larger than it appears. Another misconception is that the Mapinguari has to have osteoderms. Osteoderms are the...
Why couldn't it have plates like an armadillo? Why can't it be a big armadillo, I guess, is what I'm asking. They seem to be able to stand up on their hind legs.
bony armor-like structures that were found underneath the skin of certain ground sloths. David Oren initially thought the Mapinguari was a mylodontid, as they had osteoderms. After further research, he changed his mind and instead thought it was a megalonychid. Now, megalonychids don't have any osteoderms, so how does that explain the Mapinguari being bulletproof? Some have pointed out that the Mapinguari seemingly mixes different species of ground sloth together. The simple answer is, the Mapinguari probably aren't bulletproof, at least not completely. Keep in mind that the stories of the Mapinguari being shot don't describe the bullets bouncing off or anything like that. They just describe the Mapinguari being shot, usually followed by the shooter fleeing. In one case, a guy shot at...
Yeah, just be tanking bullets. That's like a lot of megafauna are gonna tank bullets, especially if you got the caliber of rifle for like hunting like deer-sized animals, and all of a sudden you're up against something the size of a grizzly bear.
the Mapinguari multiple times before fainting. His father later found a trail of destruction leading away from the area his son encountered it at. Many animals, especially somewhat larger animals like the Mapinguari, can shrug off a bullet, at least temporarily. Since the hunters who claim to have shot one usually ran off afterwards, the animal could have either left and healed or died elsewhere. Additionally, the ground sloth's smaller cousins are very tough creatures. Naturalist Charles Waterton said that the sloth exists long after it received wounds which would have destroyed any other animal. It may be said, on seeing a mortally wounded sloth, that life disputes with death, every inch of flesh in its body. If the smaller sloths are that tough, the larger ones would likely be as well.
That is true about sloths too, because they're really tough. They get a bird of prey will try to snag them and pull them off a branch, and they can tank those claws and hang on to that branch. And if that bird can't get them free in a couple of stoops, and it may give up and leave them with those claw wounds. And we're talking monkey birds, right? Big monkey eagles that with claws as big as my finger digging into them. And not just that, the other predators are jaguars. Jaguars have huge claws too. The only slightly smaller than lions and tigers, but they have an immense bite force in their jaw. And sloths can survive if they're able to cling to their structure. They can survive an encounter with a jaguar.
Another point brought up is that ground sloths lived in savannas and steppes, not rainforests. Why would the Mapinguari be most often sighted in the Amazons then? Remains from the Pleistocene era of both Mylodontids and Megalonychids, as well as the large ground sloth Erotherium, were found in the Amazon region, as well as the Atlantic rainforest. Whether or not the Amazon was a rainforest or a savanna during the Ice Age is hotly debated, but some research on the subject indicates that at least to the...
Are sloths gross? What do you mean by gross, I guess? They don't groom themselves very well, but that's purposeful so that they grow, so that they cultivate a culture of algae in their fur that helps camouflage them in the treetops. So they kind of look like Spanish moss hanging there instead of like an animal. So they do, as far as like say their waist though, they're very fastidious about taking care of their waist though. They climb down from the tree and go to the bathrooms on the ground specifically so that they don't get poop in their fur. A monkey eagle's not like a part monkey, part eagle. The type of eagles that hunt monkeys. There's different species of them. Harpy eagle, the Philippine eagle. There's a few, but they're all really big, and they specialize. And they have shorter wings than like a sea eagle, but they specialize in taking down like monkeys and sloths and anything else that they get their claws on up in the trees. And they're huge. They're human-sized birds. They don't weigh as much as us, but they're the same. They take up their mass is the same. They're filling the same amount of square footage, but they only weigh like a fraction of our weight because they have the hollow bones and air sacs and things like that.
The giant Erotherium, which inhabited the western Amazon, lived in a rainforest-like environment. Regardless of their habitat, ground sloths were in the Amazon region. Other ground sloths, like the...
Girl, Pragmatic Crystal, you gotta bag me up some living Spanish moss and send it to me so I can culture one of my aquariums with it.
The Australonyx seem to have inhabited Atlantic rainforest habitats on the eastern coast. In North America, Megalonyx also inhabited very wet coniferous forests, swamps, and marshes. Basically, ground sloths were a very large group of animals that lived in a bunch of places, including the rainforest or rainforest-like areas. Another thing people question, especially in regards to the debate over whether or not the Mapinguari is a sloth or a large primate, is how would a ground sloth pull the tongue out of an animal? One of the stories associated with the Mapinguari describes it pulling the tongues out of livestock. This has been used to suggest that it's not a ground sloth, but rather a giant monkey, since monkeys have hands which could actually be used to.
You know who else has hands? Raccoons. Maybe it was a giant raccoon. Raccoons have hands. Procyonids have hands. Little people hands too. It's wild. Possums have people-like hands too. And possums live in South America. What if it was a giant possum? It's weird to jump to conclusions that it had to be a monkey because it had hands. Hands are not exclusive to humans.
Theoretically, rip the tongue out of an animal. The problem is, the story isn't actually about a Mapinguari. The locals never attributed the attacks to a Mapinguari, but rather a different mystery creature. It was only later when a journalist who didn't live in the area attached the Mapinguari name to the attacks. Another question is, how would a creature as sluggish as a sloth evade discovery? Sloths are basically the modern-day mascot for being slow, and I think a lot of people are skeptical that a giant slow animal could remain undiscovered.
Oh girl, Maya, we got Montauk coming up sometime. I'm gonna be on Maya's tomorrow too. Maya, drop the link to our show for tomorrow night. We got mud fossils. More you like watching us laugh about Roger's cave vaginas and things like that. We got more of that coming. Tomorrow night, it's gonna be lit. So it's gonna be me and Maya and Vandalia 1998, and I think did you say that Doc's out this evening? And I'm filling in for him, I believe is the situation. So I'm excited for it. Always fun to do. Always fun to do a mud fossil review.
But there's no evidence that ground sloths were or are as sluggish as the tree-dwelling ones.
That's my Maya right there. She's just like me. You're just like me. Like, oh, I haven't even made a thumbnail for it yet, let alone scheduled it. It's still 36 hours away. What's the big deal? Yeah, just link your channel, girl. Yeah, there you go. PC's got your back.
The group of animals ground sloths belong to are capable of galloping quite rapidly. The giant anteater, for example, can go pretty fast. It's been calculated that even the very large Megatherium, when moving on its hind legs, could travel as fast as a briskly walking human. Megalonychid ground sloths stood on the soles of their hind feet rather than the edges, which might have increased their agility. The Mapinguari itself is described by Oren as surprisingly agile on all fours, being capable of moving swiftly and forcefully if threatened. Furthermore, almost all xenarthrans, even the giant anteater, are rarely spotted animals. Zoologist Ralph Wetzel, who discovered the Chacoan peccary, seriously believed that there could be an undiscovered but widespread species of tree sloth in the western Amazon. While a tree sloth is much smaller than a Mapinguari...
I don't know, I guess he doesn't mention it, I don't know, but Thomas Jefferson, when he sent Lewis and Clark out west, he asked them to keep an eye out for mammoths and giant sloths. So, that's Thomas Jefferson.
It's also much more sluggish. The final point in question I see people ask is that, even if the Mapinguari is a ground sloth, why regard it as anything more than a folk memory? A number of cultures have stories about animals that went extinct long ago, but the memories of the animals were passed down from generation to generation. Now this is a matter of opinion, but it's worth looking at. It's even been claimed that the whole idea of living ground sloths is based on cryptozoologists misinterpreting anthropological speculation about folk memories. David Oren's theory that the Mapinguari was a ground sloth was inspired by a first-hand sighting he received from a gold miner. The miner himself didn't seem to be familiar with Mapinguari stories either, as Oren said the man was unable to imagine what it was. In 1993, Oren believed that the Mapinguari, if real, could only have gone extinct within the previous few decades due to the first-hand sightings he had heard. During subsequent expeditions, he reportedly heard its call and discovered Mapinguari tracks. The ground sloth theory was supposed to explain actual contemporary sightings of the Mapinguari, not folk stories that had been around for generations. Huge thank you to the Cryptid Archive for writing a bunch of this video.
Yeah, Cryptid Archive, thank you. And that's Wild World is who recommended this channel to me. So yeah, you might want to go subscribe. They're doing pretty good though. 23K subscribers, doing pretty good. But this is The Truth is Scarier Than Fiction. I thought they did a pretty balanced review of the history of the Mapinguari and speculating on its identity as a ground sloth or something else, right? Maybe they're trying a little too hard to dispel some. In my opinion, they're trying a little too hard to dispel some information about the ecological impact of megafauna on our region. If there were a population of giant ground sloths, the ecological implications would be hard to hide, right? We still have the ecological implications of them existing 10,000 years ago. So certainly, if they were alive today, there'd be even more ecological impact of these animals. But that's my opinion. You can do with it what you will. But what do you guys think? Did a giant ground sloth inspire the legend of the Mapinguari? Or maybe something else? I don't know. Anyway, oh shoot, I didn't mean to close that. I was closing things down for... Hold on. Don't close. There you go. All right, back in your spot. All right. Anyway, did the giant ground sloth inspire this? Is it folk memory? Is it something else? Is there some other animal that's living in the Amazon that may be filling this niche? Why isn't there a sloth man in the Marvel Universe? All these questions still hang in the air. So, yeah. Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And remember to be kind, take care, and we'll see you next time.